Today, we are going to continue to learn about the patterns in animal characteristics in order to group them. Yesterday, you watched the beginning part of our science lesson and you needed to cut apart these cards. Today, you're going to follow along and complete the activity.
In today's activity, you're going to pretend you're an explorer. You found an animal that no one in your country has ever seen before. You wrote down all of this animal's characteristics. Now you want to figure out what kind of animal your new animal is. To do that, you're going to look at familiar animals like pigeons and horses and spiders. You'll figure out how to group animals together by thinking about how these animals are alike and how they're different. Then you'll get cards that show new mystery animals, and you'll have to figure out where each one of them belongs. I'll show you how to get started, step by step. If you're in a class, find a partner. If you're working alone, that's okay too. When you're done with this step, click the arrow on the right. Get your supplies. You'll get more supplies later.
So you already have the cards that you have cut apart, and you have used your scissors to cut the cards apart.
Cut along the dotted lines to cut out the 16 animal cards. If you're working with a partner, each person cut one page. Spread all your cards out on the table. With your partner, look at the cards. Think about what you know about each animal. Then put the cards in groups with similar animals together. It's okay if you have some animals that don't seem to fit any of your groups. Put them to the side for now. After 2 minutes, your teacher will check in and see how you're doing. I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up.
All right, so right now I want you to spread your cards out and put the cards into groups with similar animals together. So how can you group your animals? If there's an animal where you're not sure where it goes, put it off to the side.
Spread all. Discuss. Spread.
You will have 2 minutes to group your animals. Remember to look at the different characteristics underneath each animal and see if you can group them together. Remember, if there's an animal where if you can't figure out where it goes, just put it off to the side. You have about 1 more minute to group your animals. If you didn't finish, that's okay. Follow along with the video and let's see how you grouped your animals.
Discuss.
Now think about the animals that you put together. Why did you put those animals together? If you put the spider and the earthworm and the snake together, think about why you put those animals together. If you put the turtle and the squirrel and the pigeon together, why did you do that?
Discuss. Then watch the next video.
Now, pick an animal that was hard to put in a group. What is the animal? What makes it hard to decide what group it belongs in? Let's see.
When scientists are figuring out which animals to group together, they do look at the outside of an animal for clues about how to group them. For example, they might put animals that are furry and animals that are not furry into different groups. But they don't just think about what an animal looks like on the outside. Scientists also think about where the young animals come from. Do they hatch from an egg, like chicks and ducklings? Or are they born like kittens and puppies? Those don't hatch from eggs. Scientists also think about what's inside an animal's body. For example, some animals have bones or skeletons inside their bodies, while other animals don't have any bones at all. For scientists, these differences can be really helpful in deciding whether to group animals together or not. With this knowledge in mind, let's go back to the activity and try grouping animals again. Discuss these questions.
Okay, so look at all of your animals. Which of these animals do you think have bones inside their bodies? And which do you think have no bones? You can look at the characteristics on each animal card to help you. Can you change your groups?
Now, using your animal cards, find all the animals that have no bones. Put those animal cards near each other into one group.
All right, look through all of your cards and see if you can find all of the animals that have no bones. You can tell which animals have no bones by looking at the characteristics. So, for example, a penguin has bones inside its body. A spider doesn't have any bones at all. Put the animals with no bones in one category.
Take the cards of the animals with no bones and place them on top of a piece of paper. At the top of the piece of paper, write animals without bones. Once you've done that, find out other ways that these animals are alike by reading the other characteristics written on the cards.
So if you look at the animals without bones, the other characteristics that match those animals is, besides that they don't have any bones, is those animals lay eggs and those animals don't have fur, feathers, or scales. The animals without bones are the butterfly, the earthworm, the beetle, ladybug, and spider. Let's see how else the other animals can be grouped.
On your animal cards, you'll notice that all of the cards say something about how the animals are born. Some animals lay eggs, while other animals give birth to their young. Find all the animals that give birth to their young rather than laying eggs. Make a group of all the animals that give birth.
All right, look at the animal cards that give birth and the animal doesn't lay eggs. See if you can put those animals together.
Scientists have noticed that animals that give birth instead of laying eggs have a lot of other characteristics in common too. In fact, you might already know what this group of animals is called. Scientists call them mammals. Write mammals on a piece of paper like this. Put this group of cards on it. Then read the cards. In what other ways are mammals alike? And can you think of anything else that's a mammal?
All right, see if you can find these mammal cards: horse, cat, squirrel, and bat. These animals are mammals. They give birth, which means they don't lay eggs. The other characteristics that are similar with the mammals is they have bones inside their bodies, and the animals that have bones inside its body also have hair or fur. Can you think of another animal that would be a mammal?
Birds are a group of animals everyone knows. They have a lot of characteristics in common, such as having feathers. Write birds on a piece of paper and put that group of cards on there. Then read the cards. In what other ways are birds alike?
Find the birds. The birds animal cards are the hawk, the pigeon, penguin, and ostrich. Put those cards together and label them birds. How else are those animals the same? If you look at the characteristics, it will tell you how the birds are similar. The birds have bones inside their bodies, they lay eggs, and they also have feathers. The birds from the animal cards that you have are the hawk, the pigeon, penguin, and ostrich.
Okay, these are the cards that are left. Have a look at them and talk with your partner about what makes these animals different from the other animals you've seen today.
These cards may have been in your pile that is hard or you couldn't figure out. The snake, the lizard, and the turtle. So they have bones inside their bodies, they lay eggs, and they have scales. What what category could we put these animals in? Can you think of a name? There's a hint. Think about what covers their bodies.
These animals have some characteristics in common, don't they? They all lay eggs and have bones, but they also have scales. Maybe you know what this group is called. They're reptiles. Write reptiles on a sheet of paper. Put these cards on there, and then think about this. Given the characteristics they have in common, can you think of anything else that's a reptile? Now it's time for some challenges. Get these challenge cards and cut them apart. These animals are more tricky to put in groups. When you're done cutting them, go to the next slide.
Your challenge cards are yellow. Now you have two of the same for each animal. You only need three.
Now imagine you're the first person to ever see this animal. I'm sure you know what this animal is called, but how could you figure out which group it belongs in? What questions would you ask to figure out what group this animal belongs in? When you're ready for some clues, go to the next slide.
What do you think? What questions could you ask to figure out what group this animal belongs in? Let's see.
All right, here are some clues. Now, what group do you think this animal belongs in? On your card, circle what you notice. Do these pictures help answer your questions? We'll discuss what we noticed in the next video.
Okay, so on your card, find the picture. Are there bones or no bones for this animal? Does this animal lay eggs or give birth? And does this animal have hair, feathers, scales, or none? Look at the pictures to help you.
Imagine that you're the first person to ever see this animal. Now, you might already know what this animal is called, but how could you figure out which group it belongs in? What questions would you ask to figure out what group this animal belongs in? When you're ready for some clues, go to the next slide.
Let's look at the clues to help us circle.
All right, here's some clues. Now, what group do you think this animal belongs in? On your card, circle what you notice. Do these clues help answer your questions? Don't worry if you have trouble with this. We'll discuss this one in the next video.
Look at your card. Circle bones or no bones, lays eggs or gives birth. And does this animal have hair, feathers, scales, or none?
Imagine that you're the first person to ever see this animal. How could you figure out which group it belongs in? What questions would you ask to figure it out? All right, here are some clues. Do these pictures help you answer your questions? Now, what group do you think it belongs in? On your card, circle what you notice. Once you're done discussing, watch the next video.
On your card, circle bones or no bones, lays eggs or gives birth. Circle hair, feathers, scales, or none using the clues on the screen.
In today's activity, you grouped animals into 4 groups: mammals, reptiles, birds, and animals without bones. Scientists call this last group of animals invertebrates. Then you got 3 challenge animals, and you tried to figure out which group each animal fits in. Now, you might have recognized the first challenge animal as a hippopotamus or hippo. You probably figured out that a hippopotamus is a mammal because it has bones, it gives birth rather than laying eggs, and it has hair, just not a lot of it. The second challenge animal was a tarantula. Maybe you had a little bit more difficulty with this one. I'm hoping it threw you off because it's so hairy, and usually animals with hair are mammals, but tarantulas don't have bones. They also lay eggs, just like the other animals without bones. So you can see, tarantulas aren't mammals. They go in the group of animals without bones, the invertebrates. The third challenge was meant to be really hard. This animal is called a pangolin. Pangolins have scales, so you might have thought that they were reptiles. But you might have also noticed that they have hair too. And scientists who study their scales have discovered these scales are actually made of the same stuff as hair. So they're really not like reptile scales. Pangolins also give birth. They're not reptiles. Pangolins are mammals. So that's the 3 challenges. Now, one of the things I hope you notice today is that scientists don't group animals based on just one characteristic. For example, it's not enough to just know that an animal lays eggs. Many animals lay eggs. We would need to know more about an animal than just that one thing. Instead, scientists look for patterns. They look for a bunch of characteristics that a group of animals might have in common. They look for what an animal looks like on the outside. They look at what it's like when it's born, and what it looks like on the inside too. Sometimes there are animals that don't seem to share all of the characteristics of the group that they're in. They don't exactly fit the pattern for that group. Like pangolins, even though they're mammals, they have parts that look like scales. There are other animals that are even harder to figure out which group they fit into, like this furry animal that lays eggs. You can check the extras for even more animal challenges. This might surprise you, but we still don't know all the animals that live on the Earth. Every year, scientists keep discovering new animals that they've never seen before. Here are just a few of the thousands of animals seen for the first time in recent years. Each time scientists find a new animal, they look at its characteristics to try to figure out which group of animals it fits in, just like you did in the activity today. Maybe you'll be a scientist one day who groups an animal for the very first time. Have fun and stay curious.
We are going to continue to identify patterns in animal characteristics in order to group these animals in our next science experiment next week.